I've got Sam Lett on today, who is an ADHD coach. And what I'm so excited about, number one, let me tell you, jokes aside, I've reached out
Yeah.
to so many ADHD coaches. You
Yeah.
were the first one that responded. And I'm still laughing that we had our calendars wrong the first
Oh,
time.
but it's my fault though. It's my fault. Okay, so
But
yeah.
I mean, it kind of feels on brand though, a little bit,
A little bit. No, well, listen, my brain goes so fast that even with spell check, it misspells. You're laughing at myself though, right?
Yeah. So it all worked out, but I am so
Yeah.
excited because I mentioned before we started recording that I have quite a few clients I work with or business owners I come in contact with. And just the more conversations I start, I find so many people are identifying with ADHD
Yeah.
and use that as a crutch in their business and not always as a superpower, which is what I really want to talk with you about today, and just how that is something to really push you forward and propel you versus holding you back. So first, I want you to kind of tell me a little bit about how you became an ADHD coach and your expertise with that, aside from living with it yourself.
Yeah. Carefully. No, I'm kidding aside. I've been a coach for 17 and a half years. Um, and coaching fell into was more of a natural progression. I initially had a brick and mortar alternative health practice in Santa Barbara for 8 years here in California. And I'm trained as an acupuncturist and did laser acupuncture and light therapy. And what ended up happening is it turned into a coaching conversation at the end of every session. And before I was doing that work, doing acupuncture and alternative health, I was an ombudsman and a facilitator working in public policy in DC and in government. And that was a coaching conversation. All roads lead to Rome. And now here I am, 17 and a half years later, and having ADHD and having a mind that works differently has been a blessing and a major challenge, because growing up in the 80s and being misdiagnosed many times, many times. I mean, I think I always say the DSM-5 was written after me because I didn't know it was left or right, because, hey, you go to a psychologist and they throw a label on you very innocently. And there's some great psychologists. You go to a psychiatrist, they throw like, guys, come to a decision. What am I? Right. But in 2000, I was diagnosed with ADHD, and it was a thank God diagnosis, because now I knew what to do. I knew I had my brain was super sometimes. I had omnipotential sometimes. I had incredible intuition, creativity, and empathy sometimes. But the point that the piece that I was leading into too much was all the negative parts of it, the impulsivity, the sensitivity, neural and auditory sensitivity, the distractive thoughts, the overwhelm, the rejection sensitive, all the fun parts of it. And I was leaning into that, and that made no sense to me, because what was happening? I was hyper focusing on the negative because it was stimulation, right? It was serotonergic, dopaminergic stimulation, right? But no one told me that I was pivoting to the wrong space. I was hyper focusing on what was wrong with me. So what ended up happening? Every time I had a breakup in a relationship, it would really bring me down. We all go through grief, and when we lose people or we have breakups or loss of a job. But for me, it was handicapping, brutally handicapping. And I didn't understand why. Most people, they go through a breakup, or they have a difficult, when I went through my divorce, it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking, but it was hyper focusing on heartbreaking, not just going through the normal grief cycle. And I got really curious about that. It made no sense to me. So bring me to today, and I'm working with clients that are me. I know that sounds really weird and very Freudian, but when I work with clients, we're on a level playing field. It's a collegiate kind of conversation, because I am them. I understand what it's like to feel misunderstood, to feel overwhelmed, and to feel like the world is on top of you. Did I answer too much? Did I
No,
over-
that's perfect because I mean, these are all things that I've heard in small contextual, I guess, pieces, right? Versus like
Yeah,
a full-blown, I guess, explanation, right? And
yeah.
fortunately, the ADHD coaches that I'm working with, they know their ADHD. But I want to talk about a few different scenarios that pop up and how you would help them kind of work through those scenarios from like scaling their business, being an entrepreneur. So, the first thing is if I'm working with a coach who is a solopreneur, they don't have help yet, they're not at that point yet, right? And they're really struggling with lack of focus. And they're
Mhm.
struggling with building efficiency and a schedule that works for them. And they're just constantly leaning on the, well, I have ADHD, so, right?
Right.
Like, how do you work through them to create efficiency and just a environment that is most productive for them?
Awesome question. And the first thing I would ask them is, tell me when you feel focused. Tell me when you're in that liminal space of some people call it the zone, right? The flow state. There's a whole science on the state of flow when we're present to what is, and we just know what to do. When common sense is flowing through us, it's kind of like the example I use is like when we're driving on the freeway or where you are, the interstate, here the freeway, and we don't need to think about changing lanes. It just happens. The movements of the steering wheel, we just turn. We don't need to think about it. That's the space I ask them about because we all experience that, whether you're ADHD or peanut butter and jelly. It doesn't matter, neurodiverse, neurotypical. I always call ADHD a peanut butter and jelly sandwich because we've been conditioned to believe something about something that doesn't exist. ADHD doesn't exist. It's just how a brain works. It's a neurotype. So I would point them in the direction of when they are creative, when they just feel present, when they just understand stuff and they don't know why. Like Taeler, I would, if I could follow you around during the day, I'm not going to do that, but I'm just saying, if I would follow you around during the day, I would point out moments when Taeler is just present and she just knows stuff, right?
And I think
But
naturally we
yeah,
fall
right,
into those patterns of I'm a morning person, I'm a night person. And
right,
even for my own, I guess, just kind of to put this in perspective. So I love working out in the morning. However, I
yeah,
know that I'm most productive in the morning. So I always work out later in the day, or I try to, so that I'm not messing with my most productive hours, right? So when I work with somebody, I also can work for a very long time. I'm the person that doesn't really work in like 90-minute sprints. I can work for a
yeah,
while versus somebody with ADHD. And I found that those scenarios also work too, like getting out of their house and going to a co-working space or just putting themselves in places where they can focus a little bit better versus
yeah.
being at home too. But I want to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so just and it's another great question, but I just want to kind of jump off where I ended there with that. So with the flow
Yeah.
state is because once I get that information from the client, okay, so when are you most creative? When are you most present? And they'll tell me, right? And if they say I don't know, then I say, you know what, I'm gonna I'm gonna have your spouse, your relative, your friend follow you around and tell me. But most of the time they know. Then I'll ask them, okay, so where does this creativity happen? Right? You can be in creativity can happen in a closet. It can be in your car. It can be in the shower. But we drop into that space naturally during the day because we are in a walking meditation during the day. Meditation is a space of we even if we have a lot of thought in our head and it's busy, we are still present and we're ignoring what's going on up in our head. And then I'll look at what they're doing, whatever activity they're doing, and I say, okay, break it down for me. Break it down for me. And where are you noticing that you are finding the most, like what place are you finding the most flow in? Is it, if it's in your car, okay, that means outside. That means try a co-working space. But see, the co-working space, although we think it's helpful for us, we've been conditioned to believe that an outside experience or space is somehow going to give us inner quiet. It just doesn't work that way, because I've worked in co-working spaces over the years, and I got nothing done. So, and then I had a private office where I'd get a lot done, or vice versa. So it's not about where you're working, or not about the space where you're working, because no two ADHDers are alike. It's like a Venn diagram. It's like they're all shades of gray in the spectrum of ADHD, right? For me, I'm a little bit of hyperactive. I'm a little bit of inattentive. It's like, thanks God for all that. But so I would ask my clients to get really honest with me regarding what they really need, because 9 times out of 10, it's not the working space, and it may be, but that's not exactly the answer. We've conditioned ourselves to believe we need to be like sitting in a leather chair with leather bound books behind us for us to get work done.
I agree.
Right.
I've just found that some of my clients with ADHD that are, of course, working from home as entrepreneurs will get sidetracked with meal prepping, laundry, things like that. Now, I could get sidetracked with those things too. So,
Right.
I do think that a change of scenery, even if it's like multiple times, right? Maybe it's not
Right.
always a co-working space, but maybe it is a coffee shop one day, home one day, co-working space for certain, I think also what you're working on too, the area can be different as well.
Well, I always say put your white lab coat on and get experiential about it. Because for me to kind of tell a client what's going to be helpful for them is really not
Totally.
them.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
but see, I want you to also look at the outside, quote unquote, distractions. What are they based on? Thought. We create up a thought-based experience about anything, any object, right? My phone, still in its because I went surfing early in the morning, so it's still in its protective case. I can have a thought-based experience about a phone or a co-working space. That's why a co-working space may be noisy sometimes too, or may not be noisy. So I'm making up an experience about something outside of me. Whereas I could still sit in my house, have the thoughts of, I'm going to go meal prep. Sam, I can't sit still. I'm going to go have an apple or whatever. But those are all thoughts. It's a thought-based experience that I don't need to pay attention to. There's no one's holding a gun to our head and say, I need to go meal prep. We can sit with our present moment and have that experience of, I need to go meal prep, or I need to go, I don't know, pay an electric bill, whatever it is, and not take those thoughts on as real or true. We do have agency over our thinking, and that's kind of what I point my clients to, and how to see beyond their thinking when it comes to this ADHD experience, if that answers your question.
When you are taking on a new client, what are some of the biggest constraints that they're bringing to you, whether it's work related, personal related? Like, what are some problems they're like, I need help with this, my life is being impacted this way? I would love to know some of those.
A lot of it is interrelational, which means that like uh husband wife stuff, um work related stuff, and also dealing with endings in relationships, um and just overwhelm. Because ADHD, we're not, with ADHD, they should have changed the acronym ADHD to just hyper awareness, because that's all ADHD is. We're not attention deficit, we're attention different. Okay, so if you look at and I just briefly talk about our neuroanatomy. If you look at the prefrontal cortex of the brain, and if we did a brain scan or an MRI in a person with ADHD, classic ADHD, in the prefrontal cortex, we have this area that uh, filters out certain stimuli and organizes it for us. But with an ADHD brain, we're receiving all this stimulation all at once. And it's so darn overwhelming. So imagine like constantly being at a rock concert with all the special effects and the speakers right in your face. That's I always say that's a good metaphor for ADHD. It's a nonstop rock concert going on all the time. Um, but the beauty of that is that we don't miss details. We're extraordinarily intuitive and empathic, and we make great coaches, and we make great health professionals. We make great artists and creative types because we don't have that filter that filters and organizes all the incoming stimuli, the data. We're able to see details that other people don't see. I know that sounds a little bit out there, but a lot of my clients just come to me overwhelmed, and that is, it can be broken down into, okay, it's I'm overwhelmed with work, I'm overwhelmed with my family situation, I'm overwhelmed with my health issues. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Let's talk about the relationship dynamic as well, though, specifically relationships ending.
Mm.
So, when somebody is trying to manage their workload, their business, all of the responsibilities that come with being an entrepreneur, and they are navigating a breakup, for example, or a divorce or something like that, how I want to hear the differences and how that impact may be felt, and how you would recommend that they are able to still move through that situation while still scaling their business.
Can you clarify what you mean the first part? Because none of it is abnormal in terms of the experience of loss, whether
You
you're neuro.
mentioned feeling things deeper when you
Okay.
have ADHD. And so I want to know what you mean by that and
Okay.
how that
So
would
sure.
impact somebody navigating
So,
business.
so just because I share from my when I coach, I share from my own experience. So when I got divorced in 2000, my God, 17, it's been 7 years. It felt like London bridges are falling down, the metaphor. Like it literally felt that an abyss opened up and my entire life just went into this black hole of nothingness. And then I felt that emptiness. There's a clinical term called rejection sensitive dysphoria. So when I experienced that loss, my brain, again, our brain loves us, so it wants to keep us safe, but it doesn't know better. And an ADHD brain, because it hyper focuses a lot on stuff, especially stuff that it shouldn't hyper focus on sometimes, my brain was hyper focusing on the emotionality of the loss and dissecting it. And because as I just mentioned, we're experiencing incoming stimuli all at once. So a normal person going through grief will go through the stages of grief. A person with ADHD will get stuck on a stage, and sometimes we will be stuck on a stage for a month or a year. But once I understood, now going back to what I share with my clients about how mind works from the inside out, once I understood that I'm not living the experience of what happened, which is my marriage ended, but the experience of my thinking, right? We're living in our own internal network Netflix movie, right? A lot of times it's an auto-tragic, disaster film, right? I realized that I was making it all up in terms of not the end of the marriage. The end of marriages happen. That event, despite how uncomfortable it is neutral. What I was making up very innocently is all the narrative afterwards and getting stuck on the narrative and then building narrative on top of narrative because I was hyper focusing on my thinking around grief. So now you have this like huge Tower of Babel of doom and gloom thinking. And one day I just woke up to the thought that, you know what? I'm not in grief. I'm caught up in grief thinking. And now I'm addicted to the grief thinking because our brains get habituated. They're machines, they're computers. The sum total of who we are is not our brain, right? We do have consciousness, right? There's something beyond us that we can't explain that is really living us because we're not living life. Life is living us, right? I don't need to worry about my pancreas not working. I know it's just going to do its thing, or my liver or my kidneys. I don't need to, I mean, for the most part, right? Um, and once I saw that, like, yeah, grief sucks and loss sucks, and it feels terrible. But everything after that, the yeah buts, I can't believe what she did to me. I can't believe that she left me. I'm a loser. And not another woman's not going to love me. I'm middle aged. Oh my God, like I'm going to live alone in a shack somewhere. This stuff. I like, oh my God, I can write a Daniel Steele novel on all the made up crap going on in my head about the divorce that I was hyper focusing on. And that's why ADHDers make great writers. Stephen King has ADHD, diagnosed case.
So how were you able, I don't know how long that period was for you until you kind of realized what was going on, but how were you
Yeah,
able to still show up and coach your clients during that?
great question. I developed a routine for myself, where, and I'm blessed because I live in Santa Barbara, which the weather here is pretty nice, and we have mountains and ocean, and but besides all that outside stuff, I saw my inner resilience, Taylor. Our inner resilience is built into us. It's our default state. It's our essential nature. It's our North Star. It's who we are. And I would see glimpses of my fire, my inner resilience. Um, it's we get glimpses of our toughness, our inner toughness all day long. We don't pay attention to it. And I'll tell you also what happened during that time, Santa Barbara and Ojai, and then going into the valley into LA. We had one of the largest wildfires in the history of the state of California. Okay. And I was alone in my townhome in beautiful Santa Barbara. I'm doing well as a coach, but I'm alone. I'm middle age. My wife went back to Europe. I'm like, it's like, woe is me. It was really bad, and then this fire broke out. And within a couple of days, 40, 50,000 acres. And if you can go back, there's a picture of the 405 freeway. Both sides of it's on fire. It looks like literally Dante's Inferno. Santa Barbara was almost burnt down. That event, seeing how small I am, seeing how a fire could take me out. Driving on the freeway could take me out. I'm really tough. I just know what to do, even in the middle of a fire. My house almost burnt down in the middle of the fire. But you know what I did? I called up a friend who was driving to LA. I booked a flight to go back east to stay with my family for a couple of weeks while things quieted down. I called my friend, hey, I just knew what to do. In middle of divorce and depression and sorrow, I'm like, hey man, are you still going to LAX? He's like, yeah, I'll pick you up. Be ready in an hour. And you couldn't go outside. You couldn't breathe. You could see the fire in the hills, in the mountains above me. It was that bad. We were evacuated. It was just a disaster, literally. I just knew to call my friend. I didn't have to think about it. And we got in the car and we drove to LAX. And I'm like, holy cow. I survived a fire and I just knew what to do versus, God forbid, the house burned down, I'd be killed in it inside the house. I just knew what to do at that moment. And then I'm like, holy cow, I'll know what to do the next moment after that too. And the moment after that, and the moment after that, and the moment after that. And then I saw the illusion called thought. And just to condense all this, there was a gentleman named Sydney Banks who had this, I would call it a spiritual experience. He was this very, very, very normal guy from British Columbia. He had a high school education that discovered this understanding called the three principles, which is the inside out understanding of how mind works. That there's these three forces of how we work: mind, thought, and consciousness, which means that we are not living in the experience of our outside world. We're living in the experience of our thinking. After having these moments of inner resilience over and over again, I'm like, oh my God, I got this. Yeah, I might have cried 4 times that day. Went to the gym and just had the worst workout, and then came home to an empty house, right? But I'm still living in this moment right now. You and I are talking. We're present with each other. That's pretty cool. Then I saw that we are brilliantly built as human beings. I mean, Think about it. You can turn your head this way and your eye will automatically pick up a visual cue. I'm looking at my couch right now. I don't need to think about that. I don't need to tell my eye, move to the left a little bit so you can look at the couch. How cool is that? Like, we're exquisitely built as human beings, and an ADHD brain is exquisitely built. We're just focusing on the engine backfiring sometimes. We're focusing on our forgetfulness sometimes. We're hyper focusing on some things we mess up sometimes instead of focusing on what's good. There's more
Well, a lot
good
of,
about ADHD than bad. Sorry, I
right.
know that was a long story.
No, you're good. So, I mean, a lot of the coaching that you're doing, and I'm oversimplifying this, obviously, is reframing, right? With clients to kind of help them view certain scenarios a little bit
I'm pointing
differently.
my clients back to that space of calm, well-being, and center that they experience all day, but they just don't pay attention to because it's boring.
Mm.
Think about that. I'm pointing my clients back and I'm reminding them of who they are. If I can point them to a space of well-being, not like dopaminergic well-being that ADHDers look for, but a space of just common inner satisfaction. You know when you just feel good for no reason?
Mhm.
You just feel like there's this sense of inner contentment and you
Yep.
don't know why you feel good. And you didn't do anything. You're just present in this moment. When an ADHDer drops into that space, they have omnipotential. They can do anything. But we've been conditioned to believe very innocently through our teachers. And I'm the poster boy for having teachers that told me that I would struggle the rest of my life. And employers and family, and spouses and boyfriends and girlfriends, etc., have been reminding us of how hard it's going to be, that we forget who we are. And once we see what is possible when we take our finger off our thinking and not take the thought storms personally and not take our thinking seriously when our state of mind is sideways, when we're overwhelmed with thinking. Like I woke up this morning with catastrophic thoughts. So what? Listen, it's like we as a society try to do everything possible to stay away from feeling uncomfortable, right? Sometimes we just feel bad for a little while and it goes away. ADHD is kind of like if you think of every emotion you have and you put a microscope up to it and it feels very intense. But so what? You're not going to die, you know, right? You're not going to die. I had free floating anxiety and um all kinds of. I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. This is before ADHD diagnosis. All kinds of. It was then I was suffering from panic attack. Like I didn't understand what was going on. And then I said, oh wait, one day I'm just sped up right now in my thinking. But it always settles. I had anxiety driving the other day, and I love driving, but I didn't pay attention to it, and it settled on its own. When we take our finger off our thinking and not try to fix it, it always settles. Because if that wasn't the case, then I would be in a white padded room, with guys in white jackets serving me 3 meals a day in a very quiet cell somewhere. And so would every ADHDer. So I point my clients back to their inner resilience and to be not scared of their experience of ADHD. It's not ADHD that's a problem. It's our thinking around ADHD that we've conditioned ourselves to believe is a problem.
Are there any exercises that you'd be able to kind of walk me through on this podcast to kind of show what you mean? And I say that because I have, again, clients where I've watched them go through grief, or I've listened to them, not listened to it while it's literally happening, but I've heard about them having panic attacks. And then again, when these things happen, they totally just forget about their business for weeks or months on end and wonder why they're not able to grow, right? And so I'm curious just to know how you kind of work
Yeah,
through that.
it's a good question, but see, the problem with tools, techniques, and exercises, they don't work long term. I could 99.999% of people, I did a Sedona method to help squelch anxious thoughts. Sedona method is this They're like affirmation. I don't know if you've heard of the Sedona method, but every kind of method. And from being a coach for 17 and a half years, I could tell you they don't work. And I used to share tools. The only thing that I would recommend clients is awareness. Awareness, put your white lab coat on. Get curious about the neurogymnastics that your brain that loves you that's doing. Any ADHD coach, and I'm saying this from 17 and a half years of experience as a coach, that shares exercises, tools, and techniques, I'm willing to bet the bank that most of their clients are not doing them long term. They might have short-term benefit, but think about it, Taylor. It's a lot of work to try to integrate a technique into your life, okay? Because all you're doing is adding thinking on top of thinking and top of thinking, which overcomplicates everything. We know 100% that our thinking always settles. What I would suggest to your clients and to people listening that are stuck in this, I call it the swamp of sadness, right? Where our state of mind, that's actually a that's actually a from the movie The Never Ending Story. I have a 7-year-old nephew, and you remember the Never Ending Story?
I have not seen it.
There's this scene where he gets stuck in this. It's a just YouTube, but I'm sure some of your audience would know. He gets stuck in this character gets stuck in this swamp of sadness, and everyone's depressed, and you get so depressed that you can't leave, and then you end up dying in the swamp of sadness. Okay, you gotta watch it. It's Never Ending Story. It's a classic. Anyways, I always ask my clients. I said, you know what? For the next couple of days, I want you to pretend like you're a researcher or you're a scientist. Okay, I want you to put on your proverbial white lab coat. Sometimes I would actually go to my client sessions. I would ask my client to buy a white lab coat on Amazon and get their initials put in, like because you can do this and get really curious and experiential about your thinking, right? Because we don't have any control over thoughts, but they're made up. Doesn't matter what happened, cancer, death in the family, loss of a job. I have friends in Ukraine whose apartment buildings have been blown up. And then 2 hours later, they're playing soccer with their kids in the park. How do you explain that? Because thinking settles. If you do not take on that thinking as truth, and even if you do in the moment, if you just ignore it, literally ignore it, take your hand off your thinking, it doesn't mean you're not letting the thoughts move through you, because they always move through us. All we're doing is saying, I'm caught up right now. My brain's trying to protect me because the brain wants to protect us. It doesn't know better. The brain is a machine. It doesn't know about consciousness. All it knows how to do is that it will blame an event outside of us for why we're feeling this way. But it has it backwards. Hence the example of my friends in Ukraine whose apartment building was bombed and they're playing soccer a couple hours later. You know, you can read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, how he could find meaning in every second of his day after he's in Auschwitz, one of the most darkest places on earth. Okay. Because he didn't believe his thinking was true. It doesn't take much effort. All it takes is seeing. And every manifestation in ADHD, no matter what it is, I don't care what doctor says different, because it's not true. It's based on thought. ADHD is a thought-based experience. Thought is the greatest technology on Earth. Humankind, thought is a brilliant technology that we innocently misuse. If you think about what thought is, it's like Google Translate. You know how sometimes Google Translate messes things up?
Oh, frequently, yes.
And also like spell check, like I misspell my email address. Well, what does thought do? Thought basically takes the world of the formless, right? You have an idea, you want to become a coach. All right. And then we decide in a split second if we want to birth that thought into the world. right? Like we all have crazy thoughts, dark thoughts, but we don't make them a reality because we know we'd probably get arrested. Or you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
All I ask my clients to be really curious about their thought-based experience. And every time they're feeling really low and bad, to whisper to themselves, hey, Taeler, you don't have to believe it. Even if it feels real. Because remember, we feel our thinking. Hey, Taeler, don't you know it's just a thought? I work with people that have suffered with trauma, that have ADHD, major traumas. And it always comes back to the fact that what happened, but it's not here right now. But our brain still thinks it happened. And remember, a brain is like a hard drive. It's storing all kinds of crap from from over 5 years and 7 years old to adulthood. But guess what? Just like your hard drive on your computer, most of the stuff on your hard drive on your computer you don't even look at. And it's so powerful, Taeler, because people start seeing their own divinity. They start seeing their inner resilience. And they start seeing their inner wisdom underneath all the crap which is stored in our mind's hard drive. And once we see under the noise of our thinking, without trying to fix our thinking or use techniques to fix our thinking, what happens? It dies a sudden death. You talk to survivors of any, of wars, of what's going on in Ukraine or what's going on in Israel. People, life is a contact sport. We're going to get our knocks, but people are still going on with their life. ADHDers are still going on with their life. And once they see that, seeing that, like, yeah, we have our humanness. we have a lot of humanness, including me. Man, it's beautiful because the amount of time we spend up in our heads, catastrophizing, being overwhelmed, and worrying about stuff. That amount of time up here in our minds, I call it the ADHD House of Horrors, is much less over time. And I'm living testament to it. Because of all the psychologists and doctors that told me that I would be struggling the rest of my life or I'd have to take medication the rest of my life. There's no reason why I'm here today talking to you. So I know what's possible when we take our hand off our thinking.
If somebody is curious to know if they have ADHD,
yeah,
and they might think that they're on the cusp, but maybe they don't have it, what would you suggest? Other than,
well, I'm a Gemini on the cusp of. No, I'm kidding. It's bad. It's making people rising. So for better or for worse. I don't. I had a client like that a couple of weeks ago that wasn't official diagnosed ADHD, and I asked him. I said, tell me about like the good things going on in your life right now. What makes them good? Now tell me about the bad things. Okay. And does it help you to know that you may have ADHD or have symptoms of ADHD? Or can we focus on how life works and how we work as human beings? So the long and short of it, that's a tough, there's no straight answer for that. I mean, you can go through the traditional route of getting tested, going to a clinician, psychologist, and they do a self-report test, which I don't really love that much because ADHD it's not a disorder. From my experience, I've been working with lots of thousands of clients. It's just a brain type. And that's what gets confusing because there's so much misinformation on social media and even in the mental health industry. I mean, it's excuse my French, it's a cluster, you know what. It really is, and it's so sad. My family, they're in the mental health field. So, I've been around it for better or for worse, but all I ask is to really get honest with yourself, get quiet with yourself and ask, does it really matter if they're on the cusp? And if ADHD, if it's becoming a problem, ask yourself why. What can I do to improve things in my life that I have control over? And what are things that I don't have control over that it doesn't matter anyways?
I think people are always looking for labels to put problems on, right? Whether
Oh
it's
yeah.
anxiety, ADHD, or depression, whatever it is. I think that we're, now more than 10 years ago for sure. I just see we're
Yeah.
so fixated on labels and types and whatnot, and not working with it, but using those things as a crutch oftentimes versus moving through them. So that's why I bring that up. I think some people are looking for a reason, like maybe my business isn't where I want it to be, because this is why. Maybe I struggle
Yeah.
with focus because this is why, right?
Yeah. It was someone said to me, that came to me, for coaching, um, and they asked me, said, do you have dreams of expanding your business and doing this and that? Well, I already wrote a book called Beyond ADHD, which is doing really well on Amazon. And I said, well, yeah, I have pipe dreams. Like, we don't have control over that stuff. All we can do is create something from nothing, formless to form. Um, if you effort stuff in life, I'm not saying that you don't need to work. I'm not saying you don't need to put the grunt work in. What I'm saying is if you like over effort yourself, you're going to be chasing your own tail. I do know that, um, if you have a passion for something and you have ADHD, you're golden. Oh my God. If you know what you like, if you have a passion for plastic surgery and you have ADHD, you're going to be really successful. And then you can have support staff to help keep you organized, right? It's so, I mean, because both my parents have ADHD and they're in their 70s now. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't. No, I get it. I was like, I grew up in a mental health house. It was a blessing because I had wonderful parents. But you kind of see through your parents. I don't know if you look at your parents
Yeah.
and holy cow, now I know what.
You know what's coming. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of. I mean, you're like, oh, well, I definitely see
That's
myself
something.
heading that direction.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I know this conversation is very subjective, of course, and it's so case
Yeah.
by case. And obviously, I don't have ADHD, and it's just, along with the the challenges of maybe navigating catastrophes or grief,
Yeah.
etc. Right? I do find that some of my clients with ADHD tend to hit burnout a little bit quicker, or
Hmm.
at least claim that. Can you tell me why that is? I'm guessing it's just thought.
Well, because there's a couple things that are going on. And that's a great question. One, remember we talked about thought before in the beginning of the conversation. Burnout is a thought. It's a thought program. Like you can eject the burnout thought floppy disk. I'm aging myself. I don't know the burnout app from
I
your.
know what a floppy disk is. I've used them. Let's go.
Okay, true. All right. I'm a Gen Xer, so what are you gonna do? Um, I can eject that from my hard drive at any moment. But what is burnout really telling us? That's the question. What it's telling us is that we're going too fast. We need to take the hand off our thinking and slow down. Step away from step away from the vehicle. Um, that's all it's telling us. It's not, but our brain, because our brain needs to protect us, a brain is like a Rottweiler and a pit bull. It's like a brain is like a helicopter mom, it's constantly getting, if it wasn't for our brain, well, we need our brain to be, it does a lot of good things too, right? But our brain's like a helicopter parent, man. It's like a shot, it's like on the freeway, you always see a copter, KCLA, whatever, constantly annoying, like chasing car chases, whatever. That's what the brain's doing. So if you let the brain's helicopter of zooming into it too much run out of gas, you'll get present and you'll be out of your thinking. So basically what I'm saying is burnout is only telling us we need to pivot to presence and back away from it for a little while. That's it. No, but see what the brain does in our ego? It says, yeah, but this is the sign that maybe I'm just not meant to do this, right? The brain wants to play it safe, whether you have ADHD or not. But burnout is a thought. And if it's a thought, remember when said before, but you don't have to believe everything you think. Well, you can ignore burnout thoughts. And if you're feeling it, because a lot of times burnout is physiological. I feel burnout in my solar plexus all the time. I'll get up from my desk and do my ADHD walk around the block, or I'll get out of, I'm an entrepreneur like you. I'll get in my car and go to the, go surfing for an hour and come back and whatever you do, just to let the brain's operating system settle. Because remember, thought is like a river. It's constantly moving. The river of thought, and thoughts are fickle. They're not like they're not they're not solid thoughts. They're just like they're gone. They show up, and then we have a split second to take them on as truth or not. Right? It's kind of like it's like going to a buffet on a cruise ship or in Vegas, and it's just like, God, it's too much food in front of you. You need to pick like one piece of chocolate cake. Well, that's how like we can choose from our thought buffet and say, okay, I want one piece of this, one piece of this. But burnout is like, I don't know. I think of of food you don't like, and like for me, it would probably be I hate cauliflower. So like it'd be 4,000 pounds of cauliflower staring at me, and I'm like, no, I don't. Oh my God, I'm gonna throw up. That's a indicator to back off your thinking, let it settle, and come back to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think burnout is really just kind of like your,
Cauliflower.
or I mean, I like cauliflower, but
You like cauliflower? Oh my God.
I do, I do. I mean, I don't like love it, but I don't think I'm gonna throw up if I see it, like you mentioned.
I will.
But I do think burnout is our bodies and our minds, it's just our limitations, right? It's like that's kind of our stopping point. And I think that a lot of people struggle with that regardless of
Yeah.
just moving too fast, hitting it, moving too fast. I always joke with my clients, if you feel like, burnt toast every Friday, like we need to work on that, some resilience
Yeah.
for the workflow. But
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
there anything that I didn't ask you or that you want to share that would be beneficial for listeners right now with
Yeah.
ADHD?
Yeah. And thank you for having me on here. Like this is amazing. And I'm just real grateful that you asked me on. Um, because it's so important now, especially in today's high stimulus, constant distraction, the social media world. There are a lot of a lot of wonderful ADHDers out there that are just misunderstanding how to use their brilliant brains, not because there's anything wrong with them. Um, there was this quote by one of my mentors, and it went like this: if the only thing in life that we weren't afraid of was our psychology, our experience, that alone would change everything. We're talking about made up stuff, Taeler. I know that's hard for a lot of ADHDers to hear because it's triggering, because they've been through a lot, and so have I. We're not taking your past away. But don't you think it's time to start focusing on how freaking brilliant, creative, intuitive, empathic, and how much omnipotential y'all have? For goodness sakes. Do I need to repeat myself again in a different language for y'all to understand? I don't know. Like, my goodness. ADHD is like, it's like a Monet. You ever been to the where's it, the Monet in what's the gallery in New York?
Haven't been there, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, okay. It's like you look at it and it just blows your hair back. It's so like powerful, and that's 88. That's an ADHDer. I've worked with thousands of ADHDers. I have not met one ADHDer that I didn't think had incredible potential. But they got to stop being scared of their thinking, and they need to slow down to the speed of life, not to be so pithy and they need to trust that life's got them, and they also need to trust their own intuition, not to be all pithy and like woo woo, but because I'm living testament to it. There's no reason why I should be successful right now, despite what I've learned and been conditioned to believe what ADHD is. So That's my
Awesome.
statement. I'm sticking
I
to it.
think, I mean, that was a mic drop moment for me. If that didn't convince you that like we need to start changing thought patterns and controlling our thoughts, I mean, I don't know. And that's a good message for anyone, to be honest, not just
Yeah,
ADHDers. Like that's a good reminder for me. That's a good reminder for,
everybody.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
One last thing, Taylor, to just to end on is, and I say this to everybody, not just neurodiverse, neurotypical, peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or in between. We're all just one thought away from a new experience. One thought. Think about how what like if you think about all the tragedies in history, and I don't mean to just to get all into history that happened in this country and the world over the last 1,000 years. Whoever was the perpetrator of whatever terrible event that happened, it always starts with one person, right? If they didn't believe their thoughts in that moment and let their thoughts settle, right? We'd have a whole different history. We'd have very different society, for better or for worse. Think about that. We're all just one thought away from a new experience. One thought. Don't overthink it. You can't hear what I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen. When you listen to this recording, I don't want you to listen with your intellect. Your intellect is what screws everything up because you get caught up here and you're trying to figure stuff out. Listen for a feeling, not a dopamine feeling, but just calm. And pay attention in that space of calm during the day. I guarantee you that's the space where you'll know what to do next in life.
Sam, I appreciate it. This was helpful.
I
Thank you
appreciate
so
you.
much.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, y'all. I've linked where to get in touch with Sam, as well as potentially finding his book on Amazon, all those good things. And he's got tons of great videos that are super insightful, at least in my opinion. So if you
Thank
struggle
you.
with ADHD or just burnout, anxiety, overwhelm, any of those things, especially while running your business, I would say check him out.